All right. What do you think? Let's
I'm
get
ready.
started.
I'm
Let's
ready.
talk swimming.
All right. So welcome everyone. This is the Fish's first Talking with Swimming with the Fish. This is episode 1, freestyle. Coach Nicole. I'm Coach Jeanne. We're also going to have a special helper. This is Ray Bendecke, or it's actually Mr. Bendecke. He's named after our founder, Coach Ray Bendecke, who is the founder of the Fish. He is or was a member of the Beijing Olympic swimming staff, Coach Kate Ziegler to world records, world championship, and also she was an Olympian. So I want to also, but Coach Nicole, I would like to.
I'm Coach Nicole. I've been with the Fish for about 9 years, and I'm super excited to stay here with Coach Jeanne tonight and talk swimming with you all. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Coach Jeanne to give you a little bit more introduction about herself.
So my name is Coach Jeanne. I have been with Fish. I'm in my 5th year. I coach the mini fish. I've coached on and off, though, all levels for the past 35 years. The coolest thing about this, having this meeting with you tonight, is I love Summer League swimming, as I was a product of the Northern Virginia Swimming League. I swam with the Walden Glen Wahoos from 1973 to 1985. That's the 1981 Wahoos. I chose that year. It was a very special year for me. The coach in that picture is named Mark Bachman, who probably is the coach that had the most influence on me. When I started swimming, I was very inexperienced. I was 11 years old. Maybe I had dreamed of all-stars, but it was kind of a faraway dream. And in that year, 1981, I won the all-stars as a 13, 14-year-old girl. And I would not have made that accomplishment without that coach and his influence. So I would just wanted to say the 50 free is was probably my best event. I love the 50 free, and I was really excited that I get to do the freestyle talk with you all tonight.
So to kick it off, I mean, obviously you see Coach Jeanne there. She has quite a history with the freestyle events. We're going to take a look at Caleb Dressel in the 50 freestyle. This was at NCAA's when he went a 17.6, and just to kind of watch some really, really fast freestyle swimming. My apologies if this is really loud when I hit play. I will try to adjust.
And Dressel out with the fastest start again. Offer in lane 8 is also looking good, but it's Dressel all the way. 8:48. He's faster than 25, and he has a body length on the field. Caleb Dressel, the world at his feet, and he is
17.63, coming home at a 9.1. Faster going out. He somehow dropped another 0.2 off of his time. That is
pretty incredible.
Yeah, the one thing, just for a perspective point, I just want to point out that was a 50-yard.
Yes, 50-yard short course yards.
So in a meter pool would be a little bit longer. However, it still would have been an incredible swim, no matter where or how. If you swam it in a puddle, it would have been incredible.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think the biggest thing that we can take away from that, and what our goal is tonight, is just to kind of discuss freestyle and what is going to help you to put together your fastest race. So first of all, just going over our basic goals for swimming and racing. Obviously, we want to get down the pool as fast as we can. If you're in a 50, you're going down and back. For some of you, it might be a 25. You're straight shot from one end of the pool to the other. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to get there and get our hand on the wall as fast as we can? You're going to hear us talk a lot about efficiency. So using our energy efficiently and making sure that anything that we do within our strokes are helping us to achieve our goal of going fast. Right? We're going to do that with lowering our resistance or having less resistance in our strokes and maximizing the power that we can create with our body and the speed that we're able to create.
So we're going to discuss the following freestyle skills: body position, how we position our head and our hips, breathing, rotating and breathing together, the catch and pull. We're going to specifically discuss the early vertical forearm, And we're going to talk about the recovery. That's the part of the stroke where your arm comes out of the water at the end of the pull and then is over and reaches in front. We want to make sure we have a high elbow and a relaxed shoulder. And finally, we're going to go over the kicking.
So starting off with our body position, as you can see with Mr. Bendecki as our assistant, okay, your head position in freestyle is going to, and really with any stroke, is going to affect the rest of your body. Okay, so you want to make sure that your eyes are on the bottom of the pool. The water is going to be at the crown of your head. That's that top part here. Okay, so not right at your forehead looking forward and not way in the back with water traveling over your head, but right there in the middle, eyes looking down, and everything is going to stay nice and high in the water.
Okay, and then the hips. We want to make sure that your hips are lined up with your head. So we're going to be making a straight line from your goggles all the way to your toes.
So you can see that in that picture as well. You can see the swimmer's head, and that line travels straight down through her hips. Obviously her knees are bent as through the kick, but you can see that her foot is up at the surface as well at the end of that kicking.
So breathing. We want to time our breathing so it works with our rotation. When we swim freestyle, we're rotating from side to side. We're keeping our head in line with the body as we are doing our rotation. When we breathe, we want to turn our head slightly, keeping it in line with your body, and you want to just basically take as small a turn as possible. You don't want to lift the head. You want to keep one eye in the water. And what'll happen when you turn your head and you keep the one eye in, you're going to get a natural air pocket around your mouth. So you're able to get that breath. And as soon as you get your breath, you want to rotate with your body, face back in, make sure you're exhaling through the swim. We also, breathing, it is actually recommended that you alternate breathe. That means you're going to breathe. You could breathe on both sides of the body. Now, you don't do it in one stroke, but we want to make sure you breathe eyes down, and then we're going to take a few strokes and breathe to the other side. That helps with stroke balance. It also can prevent shoulder injury. And another thing with breathing, we don't want to breathe every stroke. It's better to try to breathe every 3, every 5, keep that stroke balance. We tend to, when we start breathing every stroke, get into some poor stroke habits.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So then in addition, like Coach Jeanne was mentioning, that our rotation and our breathing should work together. Okay, so your hips and your shoulders are going to rotate together, and your head's going to remain neutral on any of those strokes where you're not breathing. And basically that breath should not take you out of that good positioning or affect your rotation. You should be able to just kind of sneak that breath in by allowing your head to travel as your shoulders roll up, and then that head's going to go back in as those shoulders are coming back down. Okay. Next part, focusing on the catch and the pull, right? So the catch is going to be that beginning part of the stroke. So that first entry, and then all of that water that you are grabbing in the front of the stroke. When you do that, your fingertips are going to enter the water, we say at about a 45-degree angle, okay, in front of your shoulder. If you were thinking of yourself as a clock, right? If this was 12, this is going to be 11 and 1. So just out in front of that shoulder, those fingertips are going to enter. You want to think about those middle 2 fingers entering so that your hand is nice and flat, ready to grab. Okay. And that arm is going to extend out in front of your shoulder. That is where we're going to get into EVF, or early vertical forearm. We're going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. Okay. But you're thinking about that catch, your elbow bends like Mr. Bendecki's is. Your elbow bends and you're able to grab onto that water. And that's the water that you're going to want to pull through your stroke without losing that water that you just created with the paddle from your fingertips to your elbow. Okay. Also on here, the power phase. So that's anywhere after you've caught the water until your hand is traveling past your hips. Coach Jeanne, you were talking about how does your hand relate to where your body is? Your hand is pulling past your body, or?
So actually it's really interesting. It's like if you were to grab the top of a wall and push yourself up, your hand actually is grabbing the water, And as it's pulling, you're actually pushing your body past. So your hand's gonna, when it goes in and grabs, it's gonna stay in the same place and you're pulling yourself past that spot where your hand entered the water.
So if you could look on the lane line and see where your hand entered, you should pretty much your arm would stay in the same place
Exactly.
or as close to it
Yeah,
as
it would-
possible.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
And again, we discussed the early vertical forearm. Again, the arm is going to hinge. When you enter the water at that 45 degree, you're going to extend that arm out. We're going to hinge at the elbow. And now you got this nice long paddle. We want to make sure the wrist lines up with the arm. We don't want to have a curl in our wrist. We want to keep it firm. And we're going to keep our fingertips pointed down and our elbow is higher than our wrist.
So as you're continuing that pull, you know, your elbow is going to remain higher than your wrist. So that wrist is going to, your hand is going to be pulling pretty deep underneath your body. So after you have pulled past your hip, now we're talking about the recovery portion. So what you'll notice when you watch swimming on TV, I don't know if you guys have been watching the Olympic trials, but a lot of people, hopefully you are, a lot of people, their strokes might look a little bit different out of the water, but what you'll notice is that all the fast swimmers are pretty much following the same pattern under the water. That's where we get into that early vertical forearm, keeping our left arm on our left side of our body, our right arm on our right side of the body, with that really strong pull. Coming out of the water, unless you're like Caleb Dressel and you're super big and really strong, what we want to do is allow that shoulder to relax as much as we can. So we talk about a high elbow recovery. So like we said, that's going to start after your hand has passed your hips. That elbow is going to come up and that shoulder is going to relax as you drag fingertips first, okay, right along the surface and bring that arm over the water. It's going to put a lot less stress on your shoulder. So we're not going to be causing any pain or impingement, hopefully, in our shoulder. And it allows us to set up for that perfect hand entry with our 45-degree entry with our nice flat fingers.
Then we get to kicking. So when we're kicking freestyle, there we go. We want to have our legs nice and long. Our toes are pointed. And essentially, the top part of the kick is going to be your heels just getting to the surface of the water. And we're going to go maybe 12 to 18 inches below the water with short, quick kicks. The kick is hip driven. We don't want to kick from our knees because we're just going to bend our knees. We're going to end up kicking a lot of air. We're going to end up being really efficient. We tend to drop our hips and we end up going through the water or we're pushing ourselves down. The big thing with the toes, we want our toes pointed. If we flex them, you're basically throwing an anchor in every time. And so we don't want that because trying to get moving forward, it's going to make it a lot harder.
And there's that word again, efficiency, right? We're talking about trying to do every single thing, every part of our movement and our energy is used to help us driving forward. Okay, so when we talk about these things, that's the ideal freestyle, right? Things that we want to be working on to try to make our freestyle a lot faster. But there are some common mistakes that we see and that you might start to see throughout when you start to get tired, especially on the back end of a race. So one of those is going to be looking forward. Okay, we're also going to discuss crossover arms, lifting our head when we're breathing, the frequency of our breaths or how often you're breathing, and then ineffective kicking.
All right, so looking forward. So this would be the proper body position, but if you lift your chin to look forward, what'll happen is your hips are going to drop, which is going to cause which is going to basically cause you to swim through the water. This part of your body is submerged, so it's a lot of resistance. You know, you've tried to run through the water, not very easy. So trying to swim with your feet down, it's going to make it a lot harder as opposed to being on top of the water. This dragging of the body is going to cause a decreased stroke efficiency.
So you're going to be pulling a lot of water, but not getting as much out of it, right? Because
Exactly.
you're having to drag your whole body through the water. That's not exactly easy.
No, make me tired pretty
Yeah.
quick.
So the next problem is going to be crossover arms. So in addition, I know we discussed this a little bit with our hand entry and our body position. So when we get tired and we start to lift our head, a lot of times what you start to see is these crossover arms. And that's when you watch a swimmer and their hand is crossing past the midline and they're basically zigzagging down the pool. What's going to happen then is that hand enters, and if you're over here on the opposite side of your body, you are wasting energy trying to bring that hand either back to where you can start your catch, or you're going to be pushing yourself out to the side before you're traveling forward. Okay, so we want to focus on that entry happening just in front of the shoulder, extending the arm nice and straight out in front of that shoulder and not crisscrossing either as we're entering or as we're pulling under the water.
Okay, so breathing issues. So one of them is lifting your head when you're breathing. And again, as I mentioned, when you're breathing, your eyes are down, you want to turn just enough so one goggle comes out and you get that natural air pocket so you can get a good breath. But I think sometimes we worry that our mouth might be halfway in the water. We're going to end up inhaling a lot of water. And so people tend to lift their head up, which will cause their hips to drop, like we saw with lifting our head when we're just swimming forward. This is going to, again, decrease your stroke efficiency. We're also frequency of breaths. It's not to, breathing every stroke is one of the causes, in my opinion, for crossover arms. I think a lot of times you breathe and you get tired, you're breathing every stroke, and then you start throwing that arm over to get your breath, and we're turning, overturning, and as a result, we end up swimming, and we're basically, instead of reaching in far in front of us, we're taking a lot of little strokes and just wearing ourselves out.
Like we're fighting with the water. So if I don't want to breathe every stroke, when do I want to breathe?
You want to breathe every 3, working on long, efficient strokes. We want to, like, again, we want to conserve energy. If we're wasting a lot of energy, we're going to run out of breath. And then again, it's just like a big roll. It's just a big roller coaster or a big ball rolling downhill. You know, you start to breathe every stroke, your strokes get less efficient, your hips drop. So we just want to always think about long strokes, breathing every 3, keeping everything balanced.
And then that last part is the inefficient kicking. Okay, Coach Jeanne touched on this with the bent knees, and you'll see when people have a really strong kick, you'll see the white water coming up behind them. And that's actually happening from them using their entire leg to lift and drive that water back behind them. If you see a lot of feet splashing, that's what we're talking about with inefficient kick, okay, or ineffective kicking, where you are kicking the air and it feels like you're doing a lot of work, right? Because your feet are out of the water, there's less resistance in the air and you're going crazy, but you're not getting anywhere. So we want to make sure that we keep those feet right below the surface. Just our heels are bubbling up at the top so that we can have the fastest, most powerful kick throughout our whole race.
All right, tips for swimming fast freestyle. This is my favorite slide.
Yeah, everyone wants to swim fast freestyle.
Exactly.
That's the goal.
Exactly. So my recommendation is never to breathe your first stroke off of a streamline. So off of your dive or off of your turn. When you push off any wall, whether it's a start or a turn, that is where you have the most momentum. You want to have a nice tight streamline. And then when you start to swim, you want to maintain that momentum for as long as you can. When we breathe, it can slow you down a little bit, especially if you're not, if your head comes out of alignment. Of course, we have to breathe, but we have to be as efficient as possible when we breathe. And in a 50 or a 25 free, we don't really need to take a whole lot of breaths.
And the thing about breathing too is your body is going to crave oxygen. It's going to tell you that you need to breathe. But by the time you get that breath, a lot of times, especially when we're inside the flags, the race is over. By the time your body is able to process that oxygen, you're already at the wall and you can breathe as much as you want.
Exactly.
So we want to make sure that we're cutting down on the number of breaths, but that we are planning how many and where we are going to take them. We're going to do that by practicing this in practice. Anytime you're doing any sort of racing, if you're doing 25s or 50s at the end of practice off the side of the pool from a dive, that's a really good time to practice that. Obviously, when you're doing a little bit longer swimming, you're not going to be limiting your breaths. That's when we're talking about breathing every 3 or breathing every 5. But in a 25 or a 50, trying to cut it down to 2 or 3 breaths per length is probably a really good place to start. For some of you bigger guys, we're probably looking at trying to take 2 or 3 breaths for an entire 50. But I would recommend that you start out, see how many breaths you normally take, and then try to decrease it by 1 until that feels comfortable, and then try to cut it down again. If you're taking 8 or 9 breaths right now and you're 25 free and you're trying to go out no breath on Saturday, probably going to have a hard time. So definitely make sure that you work up to limiting those number of breaths and plan where you're going to take them, not just leaving it up to when you feel like you might need to breathe.
I would also say, especially on the finish, once you pass those flags coming into the wall, keep that head down, because in a lot of cases in those really tight races, those hundredths of a second, that breath in the wall, into the wall, can be the difference.
We're talking hundredths of a second. I mean, you saw some of the races these past 2 nights with the difference between making the Olympic team and not, because it's coming down to hundredths of a second. 1/100th of a second in that 100 breaststroke last night. Obviously with breaststroke, you're not dealing with timing of your breathing, but we're talking every little ounce of energy that you can use to get yourself on the wall first. So in addition to our breathing, we want to make sure that we're taking long, full strokes. So a lot of times people think long swimming, they think, oh, slow, long, slow, easy swimming. If you watched Caleb Dressel in that 50, his strokes were so long. He got so much distance out of each pull. That's what we're talking about. Those long, full strokes where you're not, excuse me, getting short and choppy with your inefficient swimming, but having a really fast tempo and a low stroke count is really important. I'm going to choke here in a second. I'm sorry.
So no, I think with the low stroke count, it's much better to say maybe take 12 really good, efficient strokes with a really fast tempo, as opposed to taking 36 short and sloppy strokes, because it's just gonna wear you out and you're not gonna get anywhere.
Yeah. Coming off of those strokes and helping to keep your strokes nice and long and get a lot of distance is going to be that kick. Okay. Obviously that kick, you never want it to slow down through your breath, through your turns, through any of your swimming. Kick, 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 make sure that it's driven from the hips, that your legs are relatively straight. You're not bending those knees and bringing the hands, or the hands. Yeah, if you're bringing your hands out of the water when you're kicking, you're going to have a hard time bringing those feet out of the water. Okay, keeping those toes nice and pointed.
So I have found when I was racing the 50, the sooner I got my legs engaged, I found my arms could move a lot freer. I was able to it felt so much faster.
Yeah. And then the last piece here to fast freestyle is going to be your starts and turns. We didn't touch on that here tonight, but actually you can tune in on Tuesday, July 13th and watch Coach Curtis as he presents on starts and turns. So we're going to finish before we get into questions with another really awesome freestyle race. And you want to talk about this one?
Okay, so who you see in that picture, her name is Kate Douglas. She swims for the University of Virginia. She's very prominent this week at the Olympic trials. She's racing the 50 free, and the other prominent swimmer is a swimmer named Maggie McNeil, who's already made the Canadian Olympic team. So you're going to watch NCAA women's 50 freestyle.
All order to beat Kate Douglas. That was the fastest break. You mentioned 21:09. That was faster than anybody else in the field with flying starts. That's how good that 21:09 was.
Kylie Airlines of NC State in lane number 5, the second qualifier this morning.
Maggie McNeil, keep an eye on her in lane number 3. Has a lot of speed, great underwaters. Right above her, Douglas. She has tremendous underwaters, and it's close.
Virginia in lane number 4.
Look at the white water. Look at it coming in behind her.
And it is Douglas who has it by 4/100, 21.13.
4/100ths of a second. That's what we were just talking about with every single little piece that you have counts. So now we're going to turn it over to questions. I'm going to check in the chat. I saw some hands being raised. So a couple of things, guys, if you have questions and you're raising your hands, go ahead and type those into the chat if you can. Oh, maybe. Okay, so in the chat, we're seeing that some of the secrets to fast racing, especially when we're talking about outdoor swimming and swimming in the summer, is staying hydrated, staying fueled, and taking care of yourself by staying in the shade, right? Staying cooled off. So as you're swimming, you don't feel it, but your body is sweating a lot. So making sure that after you get done, that you are able to hydrate fully and keep yourself at peak performance. Sorry, I just saw another question come in. If you are underwater, do you bend your knees? Okay, so I'm guessing that you're talking about the underwater dolphin kick. Yes. And for kick, you are going to need to bend your knees a little bit. It's going to be really hard to kick with Tin Man straight legs. But yeah, you are going to bend your knees, but when you are underwater, especially, you won't have the opportunity for those legs to come out of the water where you're going to lose that efficiency. You're going to keep fully underwater, and it's going to be driving you in both directions with your kids.
Okay.
With your kicks.
Okay.
Ooh, they're coming in hot
Yeah,
now.
they are.
Okay.
This is awesome.
All right.
So when you finish your flip turn, how many seconds should you not breathe? So it's not based on seconds. You want to swim in fast, flip turn. Ideally, you want to take at least a full stroke cycle before taking that first breath, just so you can maintain that momentum you get off the wall. But of course, if you know, the more you can do, the better, but it's not an actual set seconds. It's really when you need to breathe.
Yeah, I think that I know you've said in the past that you like to say at least 3 strokes before you take that breath. And I think, you know, like Coach Jeanne said, the further you can go, the better, really. Is there any way to prevent getting a half mouthful of water on your side breathing? Part of that is going to be practice, and part of it is going to be the positioning of your head. Okay, so when we're talking about that head lift, one of the ways that we lift is we're picking our head up and then turning it to breathe. But another way is that we're just picking the eyes up. So we're really here when we're trying to take our breath. That puts our mouth at the lowest point, and that's going to be where we get that water coming in. So if you can keep the tip of your head down a little bit more, you're going to find that air pocket that's going to create right in front of your mouth, and you should be good to go. But the more that you practice it and trying to get in what we refer to as monster goggle position, with one eye in the water and one eye out of the water, as you can see here, my mouth is able to be just above. It'll get easier and easier. If you get a little water in your mouth, just spit it out. You'll be okay. Do we have to do the dolphin kick when we dive in?
You don't have to, but especially if you're watching the Olympic trials this week, it's recommended. It's incredible. The only stroke you don't do all those dolphin kicks in is breaststroke, but in fly back, in freestyle, if you're really good at them, they can be a really good skill to get you ahead of the competition.
Yeah, and I see a couple follow-ups to this. Does dolphin kick help us get a faster pace? Absolutely. Everything that you can do to be keeping that maximum speed. Basically, when you dive in, you're going to be at the fastest point that you can be throughout your race. So the underwater dolphin kicks are going to help you to hold that and to get you up to the surface with a lot of speed. I see here also, how many streamline kicks do you recommend?
I recommend starting with 3. And then as you get more proficient at it, if you can go further and maintain that momentum, then go for it. You have to surface though before you get to the 15-meter mark. That head has to pop up at that yellow marker that you see in the pool.
So you'll see 2 yellow buoys on the lane lines actually. So the closest one to you is going to be the 15-meter mark from the other direction. So it's always that second yellow buoy when we're in a short course meter pool. How do you kick well without getting super tired? That is a really tough one, right? And that goes back, I know you're going to hate me, but to practicing it, doing it when you're tired in practice, making sure that you're noticing, okay, I'm getting really tired. Am I kicking as hard as I
Exactly.
can be? Or could I be doing a little bit more? Because if you don't do it in practice, you're not going to do it in a race. I mean, you'll try, but the way that we get better is by doing these things in practice.
And doing it correctly.
Exactly. What is a good time for the 50 free?
Well, that depends. I mean, if it's your best time, it's always a great time.
Bingo.
And we should not be worrying about what other people are doing. If it's your best time, you worked hard for that, that is the greatest time. And the fun part is you can next week try it again and go even faster.
You are racing an invisible swimmer every time you hit the water, and that swimmer is you.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
It's you from the time before, or maybe a time to come, and you are trying to get to the wall before that invisible you gets to the wall. Let's see. I'm seeing another question. Tips on how to dive. Okay. We're not going to have time to get into all of that right now, but we are having a starts and turns clinic. It is our last clinic, week 5 on, I believe it's Tuesday, July 13th with Coach Curtis. So you'll be able to tune into that. What is a good nutrition plan prior to a meet? Okay. So nothing too heavy.
Exactly.
Right? Nothing super greasy or anything that if you ate it before practice and it upset your stomach, probably not a good idea. We don't want to be going to Chick-fil-A and pounding a couple of chicken sandwiches.
Exactly.
Okay. Some light nutrition that makes you feel good. Something with a little bit of carbohydrates in it for that quick energy. Nothing super high in sugar.
Nothing spicy.
Nothing spicy. Yep.
And you want to make sure you're hydrating.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even if you eat what's right, if your body's not properly hydrated, you're still not going to feel very good. That's when we start feeling crampy and things like that.
One of the advantages too of hydrating, when you're exercising, your body produces a lot of waste products and you need the fluids in there to help you flush those out of your muscles, or they're just going to stick in there and you're going to end up with that soreness and that just the fatigue. So lots of water or a light sports drink.
In a 50 free, should you still breathe to both sides or should I breathe to my preferred side? Okay. So this is where we talked about balance, right?
Exactly.
If you are able to breathe to one side and it doesn't throw off the balance of your stroke, you might be okay in a 50 where you're only breathing a couple times.
Exactly.
But you really want to make sure that you're talking with your coach and making sure that by breathing to that one side, that you're not favoring that side through your rotation and everything.
The other thing, breathing to both sides is, even though we really don't want to watch what the other swimmers are doing, it's kind of nice to know where you are in the pool without, like I said, I don't never recommend looking around to see where you are. But, you know, if you've got clear water on one side, the one side you're turning to, but you got somebody right on your neck next to you, but you're not able to see them or have any clue they're there. That might help you go a little faster if you're aware.
Give you that little extra boost.
Yeah.
Can I swim freestyle without kick? Can you? Physically, yes, you could swim freestyle to save yourself without kicking. But when we're talking about trying to race, you want to use Mr. Bendecki
Well, I'm
here?
just thinking, if they're not kicking, what are they doing? They're basically dragging along there, and your poor arms are doing all the work, and these big, strong legs, they're getting a free ride.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't recommend it.
All right. Well, thank you. It seems like that might be the end of our questions. So thank you all very much for your time. We hope that you guys learned something, even if it just reinforced something that you've already heard. But we hope that you enjoyed, and you can join us next week for backstroke with me again, Coach Nicole. I'm going to be joined by Coach Matt. And yeah.
And if you're looking to swim year round, we have spots available. You can check out our website at pvfish.org.
We would love to have all of you join us again
Exactly.
next week, and maybe even in the pool.
Exactly.
So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Tune in next week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.